My MIL took my newborn for the weekend and wouldn't bring him back. When I drove over she said I was not the real mother. Then the officer asked why my baby's name was already changed in their files. Throwaway because my main has baby photos and local family follows it. Me, 31F. Husband, 33M. Our son, 3 weeks old. MIL, 60s. My husband, Gabe, and I have been together almost a decade. We live about 40 minutes from his mom, Darlene. She has always been the kind of person who treats boundaries like suggestions. When I was pregnant, she wanted to be in the delivery room. When we said no, she asked again, but louder. When we said no again, she said she needed to witness her grandson entering the world. She called him my baby so often that I started correcting her every time, and she started doing it more. Gabe is not blind to how she is. He just has a lifetime of practice keeping things calm with her. His default is to stall, soothe, and change the subject. Mine is to say no. The pregnancy itself was rough. Not in a dramatic way, just constant. I was tired all the time, had blood pressure scares, got put on extra monitoring, then ended up with a C-section because my son was stressed during labor. I went home sore, swollen, and barely sleeping. Darlene acted like my recovery was an inconvenience to her plans. She started coming by every other day. Not to help, to hold him. She would sit on my couch with my newborn in her arms, taking photos and texting them to people, while I stood there trying to remember if I had taken my pain meds. If I asked for him back because he needed to eat, she would say, "He is fine," like I was a babysitter asking for a turn. The third time she did that, Gabe told her, "Mom, when she asks, you hand him over right away." Darlene smiled like she was being patient with a child. Of course. That weekend, I hit a wall. My incision hurt, my milk was still regulating, and I had slept maybe 2 hours total the night before. Gabe had to be back at work for a long shift. He suggested we ask his mom to take the baby for one night so I could sleep, then bring him back the next day. I said no immediately. I did not trust her. I did not want my newborn away from me. Gabe looked exhausted and said, "You need rest. I will handle my mom. It is one night." Darlene called while we were still talking and said she was already on her way because she had a feeling we needed her. I should have taken that as the sign it was. She arrived with a packed overnight bag. Not for the baby. For her. She walked in like she lived here, washed her hands, took my son out of my arms, and said, "I will keep him for the weekend. You look like you are falling apart." I said, "No weekend. One night, if anything. He comes back tomorrow afternoon." She did a little laugh. "You will thank me." Gabe repeated it. "Tomorrow afternoon." Darlene looked at him and said, "I raised you. I know what babies need." I remember standing there while she buckled my son into his car seat like she had done it 1,000 times. I remember my body feeling heavy and wrong, like the sleep deprivation made everything slow. Before she left, I said, "If he needs anything, call me." She said, "He will be with someone experienced." Gabe kissed my forehead, told me to lock the door behind them, and promised me I could sleep. He left for work a few hours later. The house got quiet. I slept so hard it felt like I disappeared. The next morning, I woke up and panicked because I did not hear my baby. I checked my phone. No messages from Darlene. I texted, "How was last night?" No response. I waited an hour, then called. It rang and rang, then went to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. I tried to tell myself she was busy. Babies keep you busy. But my stomach started doing that cold drop thing. Around noon, she finally texted a photo. My son in a onesie I had never seen, lying on a blanket I did not recognize. Caption, "He is settled. Do not rush me. Enjoy your quiet." I texted, "Bring him back at 2 like we agreed." No reply. At 1:45, I called again. No answer. At 2:10, I called Gabe at work. He answered on the second ring, sounding tense. I told him she was not responding. He said, "She is probably driving. I will call her." 10 minutes later, he texted, "She says she will drop him off tonight." I stared at that message like it was a typo. I called Gabe again. He stepped away and said, "She told me you need more rest and you are being emotional." I told her no. She said she is keeping him. I said, "Go get him." He said, "I cannot leave. I am on duty. But I am calling her back right now." I hung up and called Darlene again. This time she answered. Her voice was calm. "Hi." I said, "You bring him back right now." She said, "No." I thought I misheard. "What do you mean no?" She said, "You are not thinking clearly. You were crying when I left. You can barely stand up straight. You need a break." I said, "He is 3 weeks old. You do not get to decide that. Bring him back." She sighed. "You are not the real mother anyway, so I do not know why you are acting like this." I felt heat go through my face. "What did you just say?" She said it again, slower. "You are not the real mother." For context, Gabe and I used an egg donor. I carried the pregnancy, I gave birth, and Gabe is the genetic father. We told Darlene because she pushed and we were tired of dodging questions about why the baby would not look like either of us. She acted supportive at the time, but she asked weird questions afterward about who the donor was and if it counted. Now her voice had that satisfied tone, like she had been saving this. I said, "He is my son. You are bringing him back." She said, "You can come see him when Gabe is home. We will talk like adults." I said, "Open the door when I get there." She said, "Do not come here. You will upset him." Then she hung up. I did not sit there and think. I put on clothes, grabbed my wallet, grabbed the folder where we keep medical papers, and drove to her house. The whole drive, I kept telling myself she was bluffing. She was being dramatic. She wanted control. She would hand him over when she saw me. When I pulled up, her car was there. I knocked. No answer. I knocked again, harder. I could hear movement inside. A TV. A floorboard. She was home. I tried the handle. Locked. I stepped back and looked through the front window. The curtains moved, just a little, then fell still. I knocked again and said, "Darlene, open the door." She did not. I called Gabe. He answered sounding like he was running. I said, "I am at her house." She will not open the door. He said, "Call the police." I said, "I do not want to call the police on your mom." He said, "She took our newborn and will not return him. Call the police." So I did. When the dispatcher asked what was happening, I said, "My mother-in-law took my newborn with permission for one night and now she will not return him." The dispatcher asked if there was a custody order. I said no. We are married. He is 3 weeks old. The dispatcher asked if the baby was in immediate danger. I said, "I do not know." She will not answer the door. The dispatcher told me to stay outside and wait for an officer. I stood on Darlene's porch with my hands shaking so hard I dropped my keys. I kept thinking about my son being inside, hungry, needing me, and her refusing to even let me see him. About 10 minutes later, a patrol car pulled up. A male officer got out and asked me what was going on. I explained again, fast, trying not to cry because I did not want him to think I was unstable like Darlene kept implying. He walked up with me and knocked. "Ma'am, it's the police. Please come to the door." Nothing. He knocked again, louder. "Ma'am, open the door." This time Darlene opened it just a crack, chain still on. She was holding my son against her shoulder like she was posing for a photo. The second I saw him, something in me went weak. His face was pressed into her sweatshirt. His little hand was curled against her chest. I said, "Give him to me." Darlene ignored me and looked at the officer. "This is a family disagreement. She is having postpartum issues." The officer asked, "Is this your grandchild?" Darlene said, "Yes." The officer asked, "Are you refusing to return the child to his parents?" Darlene said, "I am keeping him safe until Gabe gets here." The officer looked at me. "Where is the father?" I said, "At work. He told her to bring the baby back." She refused. The officer asked Darlene, "Do you have any paperwork that gives you custody or guardianship?" Darlene smiled, like this was the part she wanted. "I have something, yes." She disappeared behind the door for a second, still with the chain on, and came back holding a stack of printed papers. She pushed them toward the gap. The officer took them and started scanning. I could see the top page had a court heading. I could also see my address on it. Darlene said, "I filed emergency guardianship because she is not well. She cannot care for him." The officer's face changed. Not dramatic, just more alert. He asked, "You filed this today?" Darlene said, "Yes. I did what I had to do." Then the officer asked a question that made the air in my lungs stop. He looked down at the paperwork, then at me, and said, "Why is the baby's name different here?" I said, "What?" He turned the top page slightly so I could see. The petition had my son listed with a different first name. Not even close to ours. Different middle name too. Gabe's last name was there, but the rest was changed. The officer said, "Dispatch also has him listed under this name in the call notes." Darlene said, "That is his real name." I said, "No it is not. His name is on his hospital discharge papers. His pediatrician paperwork. Everything." Darlene said, "That is the name she picked. That is not the name Gabe wanted. That was a lie. Gabe and I picked his name together months ago. We said it out loud every day in my 3rd trimester. Darlene knew the name. She had mocked it. The officer asked Darlene, "Where is the child's birth certificate?" Darlene said, "She does not have one yet." Which was also a lie. We had the certified copies at home. The officer asked her, "Has there been a legal name change?" Darlene said, "That is what this is." The officer told her, very flat, that a legal name change for a child generally requires a court process and a judge's order, not just someone deciding it in a form they filed themselves. Darlene's eyes went sharp. "You are not a family court judge." The officer said, "Correct. But you cannot withhold a newborn from his parents based on a petition that has not been granted." Darlene said, "She is not his mother." The officer looked at me and asked, "Are you the legal parent?" I said, "Yes. I am his mother." I gave birth to him 3 weeks ago. Darlene said, that does not make her the real mother. The officer did not react to that part. He just said, ma'am, I need you to give the baby to her now. Darlene tightened her hold on him. No. The officer asked her one more time. She still said no. Then the officer said, if you do not hand the baby over right now, I am going to treat this as a possible custodial interference situation and I will force entry if needed to check the child's welfare. Darlene stared at him. I saw her calculating. She still had the chain on. She thought that meant control. Finally, she unclipped the chain and opened the door. She did not hand me my son. She backed up into the hallway with him. The officer stepped in first, then motioned me inside. Her house smelled like scented candles and old carpet. She had set up a playpen in the living room like she was expecting a long stay. My son's diaper bag was on her kitchen table, unzipped, like she had been going through it. Darlene stood there with my baby and said, I will not give him to her unless Gabe is here. The officer said, hand the baby to the mother. Darlene looked at me with a level of hatred I had never seen from her before and said, you are not his mother. Then she shoved my son into my arms. Not gently. Not careful. Like she was returning a borrowed item she did not want to lend anymore. I clutched him and checked him fast. His diaper was wet. His cheeks were red from crying. He smelled like a different detergent. I started walking toward the door without saying anything because I did not trust my voice. Darlene followed me and said, you cannot keep him from me. I have rights. The officer told her to stop and stay back. Outside, the officer asked me if I had somewhere safe to go. I said yes, home. He asked if Darlene had keys to our house. I said she used to. We took them back before the baby was born. He told me to change the locks anyway. Then he asked if I wanted to make a report. I said yes. While I was standing there holding my newborn against my chest, the officer said he needed to document that Darlene filed paperwork and that she listed the baby under a different name. He said that kind of petition can be submitted as an emergency request without the petitioner getting a full hearing right then, and the court decides whether to grant anything. I drove home with my son and locked every lock behind me. Gabe got home after midnight. He came in looking sick, like he had been holding himself together all day. He washed his hands, took our baby, and just stared at him for a long minute. Then he said, my mom filed guardianship paperwork. I said, with a different name. He sat down hard on the couch and rubbed his face with both hands. She called me while you were driving there. She said she was fixing our mistake. I said, she told me I am not the real mother. Gabe went quiet. Then he said, we are done. I do not care what she says, she is done. The next morning, we called a family law attorney. We also called the courthouse clerk's office to confirm what Darlene filed. The attorney asked if we had copies of the petition. We did, because the officer had photographed it for the report and emailed me the incident number and a link to request records. The attorney told us to file our own emergency request immediately, an order confirming custody, and a temporary restraining order. She said not to wait for Darlene's petition to get in front of a judge without us there. Gabe and I spent that day printing documents, hospital discharge paperwork, his paternity paperwork, my medical records, our marriage certificate, texts from Darlene, and a timeline. Darlene started calling around noon. We did not answer. Then she started texting Gabe. Not me. All caps messages about how I was not stable and how she could not allow a stranger to raise her grandson. Then she texted, I already changed his name. That is done. Gabe texted back one sentence, do not contact us again. She replied, you cannot stop me. That night, we got an email from a number I did not recognize. It was from Darlene. Attached were screenshots of the guardianship petition, like it was proof she had already won. The email said, I will pick him up tomorrow morning. Do not make this ugly. We did not sleep. The next morning, our attorney filed our emergency paperwork and told us to come in. She also told us to notify our pediatrician's office immediately that nobody but the parents could access records or make changes, and to lock down the patient portal. When I called the pediatrician, the receptionist paused and said, there was a call yesterday asking to change his name in our system. My throat went tight. I asked who called. She said, a woman said she was the guardian. She had his date of birth and the mother's name. That was me. Darlene knew all of it. The pediatrician's office said they did not change anything because the caller could not verify identity through their process. They added a note to the chart, put a password on the account, and flagged it as a safety issue. Then the receptionist said, also, the name she gave us is the same as what is in the referral file from the hospital. I asked what she meant. She said when the hospital sent over the newborn packet, it came with a demographic sheet that now showed the wrong first name. I sat there staring at my son sleeping in his bassinet, trying to understand how Darlene could have pulled that off. Gabe called the hospital and escalated until he got a patient advocate. The patient advocate confirmed that someone had called to correct the baby's name after discharge. They would not tell us who. They said it was logged as a family request. Our attorney told us to stop calling and to document everything instead. She said the hospital's internal record is separate from the legal birth certificate, but this still mattered because it showed a pattern, Darlene trying to create a paper trail. That afternoon, Gabe's sister, Tessa, showed up at our door. We do not have a close relationship. She lives nearby, keeps some distance from their mom, and usually stays out of conflicts. She texted Gabe first asking if she could come. He said yes. When she walked in, she looked angry but controlled. She sat at our kitchen table and said, "Mom is telling everyone you stole the baby." Gabe said, "It is our baby." Tessa said, "I know. I am telling you what she is saying." Then she took out her phone and showed us a group chat with extended family. Darlene had posted a long message about how she rescued her grandson from an unsafe situation and how the courts are involved. She used the wrong name. She used it over and over like she was practicing. Tessa said, "She is asking people for statements. She wants someone to say you were unstable." I said, "I have not even been alone with her in months." Tessa nodded and said, "She is not looking for truth. She is building a story." She offered to write her own statement, that Darlene had been escalating, that she had heard Darlene say she wanted to start over with a baby, that she believed Darlene was lying. Gabe asked why she was helping. Tessa said, "Because if she can do this to you, she can do it to anyone. And because she tried this with my daughter when I left my ex. That was new." Gabe looked at her and said, "What?" Tessa said, "She filed for temporary custody when I was in the hospital after my divorce. The judge threw it out. I thought she learned. She did not." We had a hearing 2 days later. It was not the full hearing. It was the emergency appearance where a judge reviews what has been filed and decides if there is an immediate order while everyone waits for a longer hearing. Darlene showed up with a folder, dressed like she was going to church, hair done, calm face. She saw me holding my newborn in the hallway outside the courtroom and tried to walk toward me. Our attorney stepped between us and said, "Do not approach." Darlene stopped and smiled like she was being polite. "I am just here to see my grandson." Gabe said, "You do not get to talk to her." Darlene looked at him and said, "I will forgive you when this is over." Inside the courtroom, the judge reviewed our filing first. Our attorney explained that Darlene took the baby under the agreement of one night, refused to return him, told me I was not the real mother, filed emergency guardianship using a different name, and attempted to change the baby's name through medical systems. Darlene's turn came. She claimed I was confused from postpartum and that she was protecting the baby. She claimed Gabe agreed with her at first. Gabe told the judge that was not true and that Darlene was lying. Then Darlene said, out loud in court, that I was not the real mother because we used an egg donor and that the baby should be with blood. The judge looked at her and said, "That is not how legal parentage works." Darlene said, "It is how it should work." The judge issued a temporary order right there. The baby stays with us. Darlene is not to contact me directly, and she is not to come to our home. A longer hearing was scheduled for the following week. When we walked out, Darlene followed behind us through the hallway and said, "Enjoy it while it lasts." Our attorney told us not to respond. We did not. That night, someone rang our doorbell at 9:30. We did not answer. The doorbell rang again. Then the knocking started. Hard. Gabe checked the camera. It was Darlene. She was holding a large stuffed animal and a gift bag like she was arriving to babysit. Gabe spoke through the camera. "Leave." Darlene looked up at the camera and said, "Open the door." I brought his things. Gabe said, "Leave now or we call the police." Darlene said, "Go ahead. They know his real name already." Then she left the gift bag on our doorstep and walked away. We called the non-emergency line anyway and made a report for the paper trail. The officer who came out was not the same one from her house. This one looked tired, asked if she had threatened us. Gabe said she was trying to intimidate us and create documentation about the name. The officer documented it and told us to keep all footage. Inside the gift bag was a baby blanket embroidered with the wrong name. The next day, our attorney told us to change every password we had, especially anything related to medical portals, insurance, and utilities. She told us to lock our credit too, because people who do this sometimes escalate into identity theft. That afternoon, our insurance portal showed our baby's profile had been updated. The name displayed was wrong. The same wrong name Darlene used in court. Gabe called the insurance company. He was on the phone almost an hour. Finally, he got a supervisor who confirmed that someone had called and successfully answered identity verification questions. They used my maiden name. They used my date of birth. They used my address. The supervisor said the caller claimed to be the appointed temporary guardian and said the parents were unable to manage paperwork. The supervisor said the change would be reversed, the account would be flagged, and a fraud investigation would be opened. I asked how that was possible. The supervisor said a lot of these systems assume whoever is calling has permission if they can verify personal details. Darlene had those details because she had spent years collecting them under the excuse of helping. She had my old address, my maiden name, everything. That night, Gabe's phone started blowing up with calls from unknown numbers. Then my phone did too. Voicemails started coming in. Darlene's voice, calm, rehearsed. I am giving you one last chance. Bring him to me tomorrow morning and I will drop the petition. Then a different voice. A man I did not know. Ma'am, this is your family trying to help. Your mother-in-law is worried. Please call her. Then another voicemail from Darlene. If you make me do this the hard way, it will be on you. Our attorney told us to stop listening to them and save them for evidence. So we did. The longer hearing came fast. In the days leading up to it, Darlene tried different angles. She emailed Gabe's boss. She did not say, give me the baby. She said Gabe was in a domestic situation and might be unsafe to have around patients. His boss forwarded it to Gabe and asked if everything was okay. She called my work. I am on leave, but she left a message for HR saying she was my legal guardian now. HR flagged it as suspicious and told me to block that number. She sent a long message to Tessa saying she was dead to her for choosing a stranger over family. Tessa replied once, stop. Darlene texted Gabe that she was coming to our hearing with witnesses. On the morning of the hearing, we walked into the courthouse and saw Darlene sitting on a bench with two women I did not recognize. She was holding hands with them like they were there to support her. Our attorney told us to keep walking and not look at her. Inside, the judge reviewed everything again, but more thoroughly this time. The judge asked Darlene why she filed emergency guardianship. Darlene said I was mentally unwell. The judge asked for proof. Darlene said I was not bonded with the baby because he was not really mine. The judge asked if she understood that she was arguing biology over legal parentage and that this was not a valid basis for guardianship. Darlene said, the law is wrong. The judge asked about the different name. Darlene said she was correcting it. The judge asked if either parent consented. Darlene said Gabe did, then Gabe said no, and the judge looked at her and said, that is perjury if you put it in a sworn statement. Darlene got quiet then. Not humbled. Just careful. The judge denied her petition. Fully. Dismissed. Then the judge granted the restraining order we requested, no contact with me, no contact with Gabe except through attorneys for legal matters, no coming within a certain distance of our home, my work, or the baby's medical providers, and no third-party contact. The judge also ordered Darlene to stop representing herself as the baby's guardian in any setting. Darlene left the courtroom looking stunned, but not defeated. Her face had that tight expression like she was already planning the next move. Outside, our attorney told us to call the police immediately if Darlene violated anything, even once. We went straight home. Gabe checked every window, every lock. We kept the curtains closed. We did not open the door for deliveries. We kept our phones on loud in case anything happened. 2 days after the restraining order, I got a call from the hospital. A supervisor from medical records. She said, we completed an internal review regarding the attempted name change. She would not give me details over the phone, but she did say that the request did not come from us and it was documented as fraudulent. She said the baby's chart had been corrected and locked, and that further changes would require in-person verification. Then she said, also, a person identifying herself as the baby's guardian attempted to obtain copies of records this morning. We refused and contacted security. I asked if that person was Darlene. The supervisor said she could not confirm names, but yes, it was her. Gabe called the police non-emergency line and reported the violation attempt. The officer told him to bring the restraining order to the station. That same afternoon, Gabe got a call from a detective. The detective said they were following up on the original incident report from Darlene's house. He asked if we were willing to come in and give a statement about the guardianship petition and the name change attempt. He said the court dismissal mattered because it showed she had no legal basis. We went in the next day. The detective asked about everything, the weekend agreement, the refusal to return, the not the real mother comment, the paperwork, the different name, the insurance change, the hospital calls. Then he asked for one specific thing, the photo Darlene texted me of the baby at her house the first day. I showed him. He zoomed in and pointed at the corner of the photo, at a piece of mail on the table. It had a date stamp on it. It was from the courthouse. He said, she filed before she ever refused to return him. So the plan was not panic. It was the plan. The detective said there were potential charges related to false statements and attempted interference, and that the name change attempts through institutions could cross into fraud depending on what she submitted and signed. I asked what happens now. He said, if she violates the restraining order again, call 911. Do not warn her. Do not negotiate. We need clean violations. 3 nights later, at 2 a.m., our doorbell rang. Once. Then again. Gabe checked the camera. It was Darlene. Alone. No gift bag this time. She looked frantic. Gabe did not speak through the camera. He called 911. While we waited for police, Darlene started pounding on the door and shouting my name. Not yelling insults. Yelling demands. Open up. Give him to me. You cannot keep him from me. Then she said, loud enough that the microphone caught it clearly, he is not even your baby. Our newborn woke up and started screaming. I picked him up and tried to feed him while my hands shook. 2 officers arrived within minutes. They separated her from the door. She tried to argue with them. She tried to tell them I was unstable. She tried to tell them I was not the mother. One of the officers asked, "Are you under a restraining order?" Darlene said, "This is family." The officer said, "That is not an answer." Darlene kept talking. The officer asked for her ID. She refused. Then she tried to walk toward our door again. The officer grabbed her arm and told her she was under arrest for violating the restraining order. Darlene started screaming then. Not fear. Rage. She yelled the wrong name again, like that was going to make it true. The officers led her away. One came back to our door to confirm we were okay and to give us the incident number. After they left, Gabe and I stayed awake until morning with the lights on, sitting in the living room with our baby between us. The next day, our attorney called and said Darlene's arraignment was scheduled. She said the judge could order conditions like staying away from us entirely, even beyond the restraining order, while the case was pending. A week later, the detective called again. He said Darlene had been charged for the restraining order violation, and they were also pursuing charges related to the false guardianship filing and the attempted name change actions. He told us one more thing. Darlene had called dispatch the day I went to her house. She reported that the mother abandoned the baby and that she, Darlene, was the guardian and the baby's name was the wrong name. That is why, when I called 911, the officer already saw that wrong name in their system. That is why he asked me why the baby's name had already been changed in their files. She did not change his legal name. She tried to change reality by getting her version into every system that would record it. The last piece was fixing everything she touched. We went to the pediatrician in person with IDs, the birth certificate, and the court order. The office manager printed the chart header and showed us the baby's correct name. She gave us a letter stating no one else had access. We did the same with insurance. The fraud department confirmed the account was locked down and any future changes would require a written form signed by both parents. We sent copies of the restraining order to the hospital, the pediatrician, and Gabe's workplace security desk. Tessa blocked Darlene completely. She sent Gabe one text, "Mom is calling me from different numbers. I am not answering. You are doing the right thing." Gabe's extended family went quiet after Darlene got arrested. The 2 women who sat with her in court stopped responding to her group texts. Nobody apologized to us. Nobody asked how the baby was. They just disappeared from our phones. Which was fine. The baby is safe. He is home. His legal name is intact. The restraining order is active. Darlene is facing consequences that do not involve us arguing with her. And if she ever shows up again, there is nothing to discuss.